Also, avoid caffeine. This is a stimulant that will keep your brain and your body working harder, stopping you from sleeping. It'd be far better having a nice warm glass of milk late at night. Hi folks, and welcome to Peace Unplugged. Who wants to live forever? That's a bit of a strange concept, isn't it? I guess living forever might be a bit too much for some people. But perhaps what's more important to think about is about living a life that is as full as possible and as comfortable as possible. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. It's about having the longevity in our life that's worthwhile. Now, I've spent some time recently researching this subject because I think it's really important to get to the depths of it. Now, through that research, what I've discovered is that we're living through an age now, the science is improving incredibly in terms of how our health works. I've been looking at articles about cellular health. This is really quite a fascinating subject to get into. Let's call it a more complex and in-depth dive into our general well-being. What I discovered is something called cellular senescence. This is about, actually, as we get older, our cells in our bodies actually stop dividing and they become something called zombie cells. Those zombie cells hang around in our body, and what they tend to do is cause problems. They can cause inflammatory situations in the body, and this is what causes an awful lot of common illnesses that we get later on in life, such things like arthritis. The research and evidence suggests that our cells are like batteries, or what's known as microchondria. So over time, what happens is the batteries tend to run down. This then leads to lower energy levels, and that's something I've certainly experienced in recent years. In fact, I'd say that ever since about the age of 50, my energy levels have declined quite considerably. What we're talking about here is mitochondrial health. I'm sure if you're like me, you do occasionally watch some scientific programs or documentaries on television. You come across programs like this referring to the mitochondrial health in one way or another. Delving deeper into this subject, I discovered that scientists can now measure our biological age by something called the epigenetic clock. So here's the thing: our aging can be managed by our behaviours, and it's also influenced by our environment. Now, here's the most interesting part. There appears to be four major issues, or sometimes they seem to be called pillars, regarding this subject. The first of these is about health and nutrition. Now, I think we've probably all known for a long time that what people recommend is that we try to focus our eating habits along the lines of Mediterranean diet. So to a large extent, that means trying to avoid too much processed food, eating plenty of colourful vegetables, plenty of colourful fruit, and for those of us that are able to, if we haven't got allergies, is nut-based food as well. And of course, fish. Many people these days now resort to going to pescatarian or vegetarian or vegan styles of eating. Now, I do try to lean towards pescatarian diet myself, but I do also eat quite a bit of meat because that's the lifestyle that I'm living in at home at the moment. One thing I did learn a few years ago is that there is a way of eating our meals because we have so much on our plates of differing variety. Something I learned a long time ago is that if you've got a meal that's got vegetables and potatoes and meat on it, then a really healthy way of helping the digestion of that food is to aim for the vegetables first and the meat last. What I discovered is that stops an awful lot of disruption in the gut, and it helps the digestion to work in a more positive way. Many different cultures talk about the concept of fasting, and it appears to be that's a very healthy approach in many cases. So think about the length of time between meals. It also appears, from what I've researched, that giving a long period of time between each meals allows the body to process the food correctly and to digest it correctly. Eating a bit too much or a bit too often can sometimes cause that to be interfered with. During fasting, it appears the body activates a chance for it to do a proper clean-up of the body, taking away all the things inside the body that we don't need. The next important pillar is, of course, exercise. And that's getting exercise. Now, we're all at different ages. So even in older age, if you're finding that exercise is not as vigorous as it used to be, just doing some exercise is good. Just going for a nice long walk is very helpful. Or even if you're stuck indoors and you don't want to go out too much, exercising, just doing some little aerobic exercises each day keeps the muscles working and operating as they should do. This is not just about being a gymnasium monster. All right, I know some of us do like to get into gymnasium. I used to go to gymnasium when I was much younger, and that's sort of getting those big workouts. In fact, in my 40s, I used to go out for long runs until actually it got to the point where I found that my bones were starting to wear away, and I just had to stop doing that. But it's still important to keep a little bit of a good exercise. So some of those examples of that are things like yoga or Pilates. Perhaps in later life, they're the right things to engage in. Now, the next pillar is about restorative sleep. Now, that can be quite challenging for some of us. I had a history of shift work, 12-hour shifts, day shifts, night shifts, and that really does kind of mess about with your metabolism. But it was needs must, because frankly we need to work and we need to earn money and we need to live from that point of view. But if you can try to manage, if you're not in that situation, so if we can try to manage our sleep patterns on a regular basis, getting enough sleep at night, getting a good sleep hygiene, that is very important. Chemical melatonin helps us to sleep well. What can interfere with melatonin is blue light. Lots of us, and I'm as guilty as the rest of us, having a television in the bedroom and sometimes late at night sitting up and watching that TV, or just leaving it on a bit too long as we doze off, doesn't help for sleep hygiene. It's going to disturb things. It's useful to have our bedrooms uncluttered, a cool place, somewhere that we can keep as dark as possible during the night. Try to avoid eating food late at night. If we eat food late and then go to sleep, what we find is the body doesn't relax properly. It's still processing that food, so the body's then not resting as it should do. Also, avoid caffeine. This is a stimulant, and that will keep your brain and your body working harder when you've been sleeping. It'd be far better having a nice warm glass of milk late at night. The final one, probably the most important part of this process, is to have good emotional well-being. So that means having good connection with other human beings. The final part of this is to have good emotional well-being. So part of that is to make sure that we are connecting and talking to others, being around other human beings. If we isolate ourselves, that's very bad for our mental health. Doing our best to avoid, or at least to address stress. Stress releases the chemical called cortisol, and that is particularly nasty to our bodies. Cortisol can suppress the immune system. Have you ever come across a situation that when you're stressed, you end up with a physical ailment, picking up colds and coughs and general infections? These tend to occur when we are stressed. And of course, those of you that follow me and know me well know that I'm an absolute advocate of mindfulness meditation. It's a great way of allowing the body to sit down and to balance out. So let's just review those 4 pillars. Pillar number one is metabolic health and nutrition. Pillar number 2 is about regular exercise that's appropriate for us at whatever age we are. Pillar 3 is to address sleep hygiene. And pillar number 4, probably the most important, is about looking after our emotional well-being and keeping connection with others around us. As a reference point, more information can be found out about this, in the UK at least, on the mind.org.uk website. So as I share this information with you, I'm not only talking to you, I'm talking to me as well, because these are important things that I know that I need to address in my life, address parts of my lifestyle to maintain at least a reasonable amount of general health. I encourage you to take care and be kind to yourselves. So I'll speak to you again on the next podcast. Bye for now. This is Martin, Peace Unplugged. Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow, like and share. Thank you very much. Martin, Peace Unplugged.